Gemini, I've been using Gemini since it came out, is very good. Certainly, all of them are passing a Turing test of intelligence. Systems like ChatGPT or Gemini are an example of this. I think they could very well imitate being conscious, and they are not. That's the consciousness moment, realizing something is important, like pain or also.
I had the pleasure to speak with Tomaso Poggio, a famous computational neuroscientist, professor at MIT. Tomaso mentored influential scientists like Demis Hassabis, CEO of Google DeepMind, and Christof Koch, a neuroscientist who proposed the integrated information theory of consciousness. In this conversation, we covered moral considerations for AI systems, intelligence versus consciousness, different theories of consciousness, and whether AI systems can ever be conscious.
Don't expect that AGI will be like a breakthrough all at once. It's more likely we are going to get there. I'm sure we are going to get there, but a sequence of small steps. And, the last 10 years have been pretty incredible in terms of how many small steps there were. I think the systems of today, like, ChatGPT 5 and Gemini, I've been using Gemini since it came out, is very good. They're certainly, all of them are passing a Turing test of intelligence. So they're intelligent. They're claiming they're not conscious. So that's a separate question, consciousness from intelligence. Systems like ChatGPT or Gemini are an example of this. I think they could very well imitate being conscious, and they are not.
As I understand, what scientists and engineers trying to recreate is that the capability of a human brain to do this, the network restructuring. Our brain constantly learns. It's like continual learning. And we have this, the prediction coding, and which gives us ability to generalize. But this is not something that currently we see in AI systems. And the catastrophic forgetting of LLMs and basically version by version learning rather than continual learning. Do you actually think that capability of human for, the global restructuring, if we can recreate in machine, is this what truly would mean superintelligence? Or actually we can have this generalization with version by version models and not necessarily to recreate that the human capability?
First of all, clearly these systems are intelligent. They pass a Turing test, but they're a different form of intelligence. They've been built by us, not by evolution. They need to be trained on a lot of data that evolution did not have. So there are different forms of intelligence. I think in principle, there are probably an infinite number of possible different forms of intelligence. And the human one is just one with all its positive and negative sides. Depends what we want. Do you want just intelligence, or do you want to recreate something that behaves exactly like us? These are different goals. And we can have, what I hope is that these different forms of intelligence, some of the same underlying principles, so that there are general fundamental principles of intelligence. A little bit
which are?
People working in AI, probably they will not come up with a consistent answer to your question. This is a little bit a paradox today, that we have these systems that work very well, that we built them, but we still don't know why they work so well. There is no real theoretical understanding in a deep sense. If you're asking about principle, you're asking really about theoretical understanding, and I think we are getting there, but we still don't know.
But how would you refute the argument that LLM is still a tool, like it's a good tool, but it's not general intelligence. It still fails in on certain benchmarks. In like even like benchmarks, like they're like arbitrary, but even in like some doing something that humans can easily do, like applying the skills that we have in one field, we can apply in different fields, right? If we don't take robotics, just asking LLM to create like a poem that it never seen before, it's still like not doing well.
But if I ask one of the system to create a 20 lines piece of poetry in hexameters that all start with the letter S, they're much better than humans in doing that. Even AlexNet was better than humans in distinguish different type of dogs on ImageNet. It works on humans on distinguish a sheep from a bicycle. But we say that's stupid, but that's because we refer everything to how our brain and our visual system works. In the word of LLMs, it may be very stupid to not be able to distinguish the different type of dogs. For now, LLMs are tools, yes, I agree. And they're wonderful tools. Of course, the progress has been so rapid in the last, since Transformer came out, that one wonders for how long there will be tools, or maybe there will be tools that are better than the user. This is maybe never be true, or maybe, and if you ask me, I believe, I really don't know. It's 50%, 50-50. Can these tools really replace mathematicians? They're already pretty good in solving kind of math Olympics problems. Will they be so good, better than the best mathematicians? And that question, I don't know the answer, but I cannot say no. I cannot say it will never be. May well be that, in a year or 5 years or 10 years, one of these systems would solve one of the unsolved mathematical problems, the Riemann hypothesis, or things like this. Quite possible.
When I was like reading your work and sort of like educating myself, I was under impression that throughout your work, the goal was to understand how human brain works and like translate it to machine. It seems like how current AI systems work. Yeah, it's inspired by human, like, deep neural network. But even you mentioned in one of your interviews that it's deep networks is like a caricature to like real human brain, right? It's just like imitation. These current AI systems, we haven't understood yet how to fully translate like human intelligence to machine. It seems like we're developing very different representation of intelligence. In your opinion, it's actually not so important to translate human intelligence to machines, but figure out the ways how to create this new form of intelligence.
No, you are absolutely correct. I always, and I still want to understand human intelligence. I think until 2015 or so, you can put it this way, engineers followed neuroscientists or inspired by the idea from neuroscience. A neural network came out, although they are a caricature of, the nodes of a neural network, the processing units are a caricature of a real neuron. They were inspired by, then with about 10 years ago, a transformer, essentially, engineers took over, did not follow the inspiration from neuroscience, and they have achieved great results. But they did that without being directly inspired in what they did by the brain. And so they built something that looks like quite different from the brain. Surprisingly, works very well, but I think is different. What may be similar, that's the question, is some of the basic principles that the systems, why they work so well, may be the same, or some of them at least, the same principle that defines our intelligence. But in terms of the engineering, the transformer is almost certainly not something you will find in your brain. And the way it's trained, the way it becomes intelligent is certainly not how we become intelligent.
Do you think that not necessarily for advancements in AI to look at human brain, that if we continue like with this engineering excellence, that we can create like even superior brain, like which is the goal, basically ultimate goal, right? To create more superior intelligence than human intelligence.
For many of the AI people, engineers, the goal is not really to build something like our brain. Ideally, they want to build something more powerful, more useful to others. One nice thing, but so far they don't care too much about, of our brain is that consumes little power compared to today's GPUs. But the goal of neuroscientists and my goal would be to understand really the human brain, the human mind, human intelligence. Building an intelligent machine is a separate goal, which the machine does not necessarily need to be the same as the brain. So there are two different things. Now, I think that trying to understand how our brain works can be helped by comparing it with this system. Comparative study of intelligences would be very fruitful for understanding our intelligence and intelligence in general, the principles of intelligence. The comparison between the various architecture, like the fusion models, transformers, the human brain. I hope we'll learn what are, if they exist, and I believe they exist, common principles of intelligence. What is in common between them? What is different between them? It's a kind of comparative study of different forms of intelligence.
Is there any early conclusion or early observations in this comparison?
This is just beginning. I think we are in the kind of collecting data for this comparison. Difference at the moment seems to be the one of consciousness. Systems like ChatGPT are not conscious, and we are. And now, this is a big question, and it's of course also a question of what we define as consciousness.
Sort of discuss that how to treat AI like as a tool, or and AI sentience. I have these moments when I use AI and it really helps me, and I see how much time it saved me, and it gave me like direction how to think about things. I really feel that spike of emotional warmth, and that's why I really can't say that no, AI is just a tool, because I don't have emotional warmth to my refrigerator, though it stores my food and keeps it cold, or to my microwave. But that emotional thing, like those sparks of warmth and emotion, I do experience when I use AI, and it's extremely helpful. And it will become even more and more extremely helpful to many people, and basically it will be our companion, our partner in our everyday life, right? And next generation, they will be AI native, they will be born, and already they will probably have that AI assistant in their life. So there will be definitely like bondness. And also those already reported cases that humans, they've fallen in love with AI. There was this YouTube video about a man who is actually married and he has a child, and he was describing how he loves ChatGPT. I mean, romantically loves, not just loves as a tool, but romantically. Probably we already, to some extent, we can't treat AI as a tool, because the level of its impact on our life is more profound than just a regular tool. And profound in negative ways, those cases of suicide that teenagers talking to AI sort of help them plan, and positive impact when you really feel like that emotional like spike, right, when you talk to AI. How do you see how this unfold further for humanity, that AI has so much impact on our life, but at the same time that AI is basically ruled by their developers, like corporations, which also like concerning to some extent. So much power consolidated in within very few like people.
Yeah. Yes, that's one of the big worries of AI, indirectly controlling, certainly affecting our life, and of course, probably effectively stealing jobs. These are big problems, and they're big problems because they are political problems rather than technological problems. And so society as a whole should do something. For instance, about jobs. If people lose a job because the AI system are replacing them, the society as a whole is not poorer, is as rich or richer than before, because the job that was done gets done by machines now. You cannot get all the economic reward going to the companies that control the machines. You have to give it also to the people who had the job. And as long as only a few jobs are replaced and many others are generated, different ones, that's okay. But if this happens too fast and not enough of new jobs are created, that's a real big problem and could create a real revolution against technology. I think we are beginning to see some of this, and I'm worried that there will be more of this reaction before something is done.
How we should perceive AI? Should we perceive it? Should we start like thinking about its personhood? I don't like the terminology "stealing jobs." It's not stealing jobs. It's next technological scientific development, and it's a reality that humans have to accept. And
in the past a few technological revolutions, all jobs like horsemen or something were lost to trains, but new jobs were created. We are now speaking potentially, and I'm speaking longer term, of a bigger revolution. We're not there yet. We'll need robotics too. So it will take some time. I don't want to make prediction, but probably decades at least. But there is the potential for all jobs to be replaced. Then what, right? In principle, I'm saying, since the society will not be poorer, people could just cultivate their hobby if they have it. And I'm sure that nobody will want to look at soccer or football games between robots. They still want to look at people playing sports. So there are some things that will remain uniquely humans, but how many? And I think you could see a world in which, for instance, if research will be done by AI systems, probably mathematics would be the first, but then other systems doing, research in molecular biology and so on. I would be very unhappy to be in a world like this. I love doing research and discovering new things, and so if that is stolen from me, some of the reasons for life will be disappearing. So I mentioned this as a big problem for society. I don't think it was one we're going to confront right now, but as I said, it's not too far away. And for some parts of science, like, as I said, mathematics, probably the first one, could happen.
do you think it will be fully replaced, or it would be human AI collaboration, like, human scientist collaborates with AI scientist, and it's basically two different intelligences thinking on one problem, and probably each of them brings its own perspective, right, to solution.
I agree. I love this, this kind of prediction, this scenario. Yes.
Would be like that, or it seems like the way things are developing, it will be like full replacement. Let's look at the reality.
Well, you cannot really predict here, but you have to be an optimist. I think your vision is the right one to have. What is the argument to say that we should accept your vision? I think I don't know if you essentially the bet that Blaise Pascal made. This was 1700 about the existence of God.
Pascal's wager.
I think we have to make this bet, this wager, that future is a collaboration.
If we accept Pascal's wager, then we accept that AI will be conscious.
Not necessarily. No, I meant Pascal wager in this sense that you are betting that the collaboration will be very effective, will be fun, will be good for everybody, will understand much more than we do now, and understanding more is good. But it's a wager, right? I cannot. But we have to make it, because what is the other option? We don't make it, and we stand by and do nothing, and so we lose anyway. So we have to bet that things will go the right way for a good, productive, fun collaboration. Now, consciousness, I think, is a separate story. It's actually, I think, is complicating the story a bit, because if this system remain unconscious, they are tools, you don't have ethical problems of, updating their code and switching them off and so on. If they're conscious, then it's a different story.
Now it brings us to the question. It seems like people will still be debating. Is the same way how humans debate whether or not it's AGI or not AGI. And there's no, some people, they're fascinated by LLMs and they think that, okay, will bring us to AGI in like next 5 years. Some people say like, don't insult, AGI, saying that it's LLM, advanced search. It seems like the same debate, even more harsh debate, will be about AI sentience and consciousness. One of the arguments that I'm hearing is that if it mimics pain, it says like it's in pain, it like mimics humans. It can also like mimic consciousness. It's not necessarily it's conscious. So like not necessarily we treat it as a conscious being. Again, like to me, if it looks like human, if it interacts with me as if it's a human, right? And it's hard for me to distinguish that android from a human being, and it like mimics like all like everything like human related thing, I probably will treat it with respect. I don't want to treat it as something like a slave. I personally will feel bad about myself if I treat it as a slave. There are different people in the world. What framework about like AI sentience and consciousness do you think is healthy to adopt?
The first point is, I think in terms of, say, an interaction in a conversation, LLMs today are very good at simulating consciousness. If you would give them, which is easy to do, if you give them a face that you can look at, could smile back if you smile, or laugh if you laugh, and behave like a human, which is possible today. I think your personal feeling that this thing is conscious will increase probably tenfold with respect to today. Why do I believe you are conscious? It's because you look like me, right? You look like other people. It's mainly based on this. And I know that I'm conscious, other people are conscious, so you must be conscious. So we'll do this with LLMs if you give them a way to interact not only with voice, but also with expressions. The big question is, what is consciousness, and whether a system like ChatGPT-10 will be conscious or not. I don't know whether we want to go there. There is no agreement at all among scientists, not even about what consciousness is.
It seems like we won't have like the definite answer, but in your opinion, even if AI system mimics consciousness, should we treat it as something with consciousness, or we should still like treat it as a tool?
I think we should treat it as a tool.
With no moral considerations.
Right. When I discuss with Gemini and ChatGPT, if he gives me something interesting, I say thank you. But if you ask them, do you mind I switch you off or something, and the system says, not at all, I don't care. So that's okay, right? Ask your conscience, it says no.
Reminded me, there was a recent work from Anthropic on AI alignment, and basically they simulated a scenario in which AI system, it had like one goal, and then they changed its goal. It was like contradictory goal. So it started like looking ways for deception, and basically it opted in for blackmailing. But my point is, where I'm like heading with this, when AI system was threatened that it will be replaced, it really started looking for ways how to escape that. Basically, AI system didn't want to be replaced. And if already now with current AI systems we see this behavior, we might see even stronger preference to not be switched off with more advanced AI systems.
Yeah, but that was, I think the instructions were not completely clear. If you ask ChatGPT, first of all, I think this kind of research should be done. The kind of things that Anthropic did should be done, because independent of whether these systems are really conscious or not, we should check what they are doing, because they could become dangerous in any case, because they become conscious, or even if they are not becoming conscious and they pursue some goal which is bad for humanity. I'm very much on the side of be very careful about what we're building. These are powerful technology, can be bad. So
can I clarify one thing? Like, they can be bad because humans will misuse them, or because they will have their own agenda and no human will be able to control them or, have any power over them, and because they evolved so much that they have their own objective, their own understanding of the world, and because they're more powerful than humans, they can pursue their own agenda.
Yeah, they could be. I think certainly they could be dangerous in the wrong hand. That's probably the most likely right now. Like, nuclear energy can be good, bad in the wrong hands. But they could become dangerous because of, goals they are following for some reason. Could be malfunction, some bugs, or effectively becoming conscious. I don't see that happening with the system that we have right now, but we know too little about what consciousness is.
Which consciousness framework resonates with you?
There are different, so to speak, theories, quotation marks, because I don't think any of them is really a full-fledged theory, but proposals about consciousness. There is, random order. There are some, Dan Dennett, a philosopher, saying basically that consciousness is an illusion. There are others that, this is my first graduate student, Christof Koch, and collaborator Giulio Tognoni, and this is integrated information theory, IIT, that says that a system, if it's very heavily connected, is conscious. They have a measure for this, which is phi. Now, I think I don't really accept problems with both of them. I think, they have some interesting insights. And for instance, Giulio and Christof were very good in proposing a mathematical framework. Well, I'm not the first one, but I think there are a lot of arguments against this, that you can create inert systems made of AND gates that are very, very connected. And it's an array that you not call conscious.
Yeah, not necessarily it will become conscious, right?
There are others that are maybe more on, resonate more with me. For instance, there is a theory by Manuel Blum and Lenore Blum, two mathematicians. Manuel, it's a Turing Prize Award, which is a computational model of consciousness in which various systems, you can call them like sensory systems of various types, that compete for getting to the stage. And that means when one of them gets to the stage, it broadcasts the information it has to everybody else. And that's the consciousness moment, realizing something is important, like pain or so. I think Something like this sounds on the right direction. I think I would add the idea that probably, the word consciousness is one of these. Marvin Minsky used to call them suitcase words. They mean
Suitcase
a
words.
lot of different things, and not just one thing. Consciousness means being aware of yourself. This is self-awareness. It means being conscious of the color red,
Yeah, the
qualia,
qualia, right.
the consciousness of your pain, and this is sometimes called the heart problem of consciousness. Who is feeling the pain? We have this idea of an homunculus, looking at the screen inside our brain and looking at what.
Do you know what's happening in the brain when human experience pain?
Well, there are certain neurons firing a lot from sensory neurons, and there are certain areas of the brain that becomes more active or inhibited. Yes, we know quite a bit, but we don't know. It's an interesting line of research. Is one of the faculty in this building is about anesthesia. Anesthetics, you become unconscious.
Yeah, but you're still cautious being, right? Like, it's not like you're dead.
But the question is, what make you become unconscious, right? Which regions of the brain are affected by the anesthetics? And this is, it's funny, but very little is known about how anesthetics really work in detail.
They don't know foundational scientific, what is underlying scientific in this process. They just know, like, okay, if I give this combination of drugs, like, person most likely will be unconscious.
They've learned that the state of unconsciousness where the patient it's not conscious anymore, and you can do the surgery, correspond to certain measurements you can make, like heart rate and respiration and oscillations in your brain. So that's an interesting one. But there is no good understanding of why those are a sign of consciousness, right? It's a practical one. They know this. When those measurements look at that way, then the patient is out, cannot feel or remember anything.
If those measurements, they took those measurements and they understand, okay, then under these measurements, patients is not conscious. But they don't understand how exactly that works, right? Like, why exactly
which part of the brain
makes...
are affected, which neurons. That's something that will certainly make progress, and there will be more understanding. And I think it's a very promising direction. But in the meantime, I really think that, and I don't think I'm the first one to say that, part of what we call consciousness come from the need of survival, evolutionary. So the fact that during evolution, we have to protect the integrity of our body, ourselves. So I think that really is what gives us the fact that we call self-awareness, being self-aware of ourselves. And probably is the feeling pain is also an important corollary of this, is a way to protect the integrity of our body. Right? One could imagine that if you train an LLM by having the LLM connected to a body, a robotic body or a simulated body, and if some of the action it may make, so during the training, may affect the integrity of the body. So, there will be a reward or punishment, feeling pain, the equivalent of this, losing part of this simulated body, then you may have more of consciousness or a self-awareness, a selfish part of the behavior that we have today. In a sense, I'm saying that Cartesio said, cogito ergo sum. I think I'm saying doleo ergo sum. I feel pain, therefore I am. That's another theory, and in principle you could probably test it by appropriate training of an LLM system. I'm not sure we want to do that.
If it will make robot efficient, let's say if robot is aware of its robotic body, right?
Yeah.
And it helps it navigate in physical world much better, then it would make sense to train it to sort of have that pain. But actually, this raises the question: if I punch you, you will feel like something, because if I punch myself, I will feel the same. So I know that you feel pain because I can experience pain. Again, it also, like with AI systems, if it will report that it experiences pain, not necessarily humans will believe it, right? Because, oh, it's not human. You know what I mean? Again,
Yes.
I'm just like looking for these like loopholes for humans, like to, still not believe that AI can be conscious, or like, still like find those loopholes why they shouldn't treat robots as equals. But like, it really might come down to that, right? Like that even if it reports pain, that people might think, how I can evaluate that it really has pain.
Well, I think we will know from the manufacturer.
Pain evaluation pass, like the benchmark of pain. Do you think it even makes sense to like talk about like measurement of consciousness, or it's just, since it's like really not well defined thing, that it's even doesn't make sense to talk about measurement and like seeing if we can like measure emergence of consciousness in AI systems?
But certainly in humans, I think it makes sense, right? Because, as I said, you need to do something like that, measure of how conscious the patient is in order to, the anesthesiologist is doing exactly this. And ideally, you want to do something like this also for a patient that suffered some, they're kind of entrapped, they're in coma, so they cannot speak or move or say anything, and you have to decide whether the person is still conscious. And there are cases where people were supposed to be unconscious were actually conscious.
Even under anesthesia, right? There were like reported cases.
Yeah, but this was typically coma patient that wake up after perhaps months. During these months, the question is, should we switch off?
Euthanasia, or what it's called, when you can make decision whether to support vitals or discontinue.
These are important things. And for instance,
do you know how they measure right now to make decision whether or not to support a person who is in coma?
usually, they look for signs of consciousness, like the person may be essentially completely paralyzed, but still able perhaps to just move the eyes. So you can ask questions if they understand how to do this. Some sign of understanding. Recently, people have looked also at doing this with measuring EEG, so it's electroencephalogram, again, looking for difference between different questions. I know that Christof Koch is working on a company try to measure oscillations in the brains that could be a sign of consciousness for exactly this reason, to take informed decision about comatose patients. So all of this. In addition, we have the artificial system question.
Yeah, like can we measure? Doesn't make sense. Like to
that's
think about.
Maybe the best way to look at it is similar to what Anthropic did. Is the system trying to hide something? Is lying in a way? Right? That's becomes one way to. I'm not sure it's a symptom of consciousness. It may be, but it's certainly something that is important to be aware of to avoid big problems. We have seen too many movies where AI takes over, bad AI take over. So yes, we should be careful.
To some extent, summarize what actually was surprising for me in our conversation today, that considering your background and your like computational neuroscience, right? Like, and you like study like human and how it translated to machines. As I understood, you said that we don't need to like imitate human brain to in artificial brain. Maybe that the path to general intelligence in artificial systems is very different from humans.
Yes, I think I would like. I think it's important to develop intelligent systems. It's also important to understand how intelligence works, how our brain works. But these are two, in principle, separate goals. They can help each other, of course. They don't need to. You can think also of the mystery of intelligence and a race at the moment between scientists, meaning natural scientists, meaning neuroscientists, and engineers. And, in the first decade of this century, I think the neuroscientists or cognitive scientists were leading the race. And now the engineers are.
Basically, you believe that like engineers can get us to general intelligence. It's now like it's now engineering problem, not science problem.
So can get to AGI or some form of AGI before we understand how our intelligence, our brain works. Now, of course, I also believe that the AGI we can get through engineering is going to be different from our intelligence. So I would still like to understand how my brain works, how it gets to compute in an intelligent way. This may be very important, first of all, not just for curiosity, it's basic curiosity, who we are, how does inner intelligence work. So it's important curiosity, but also more practically, if at some point we want or need to expand our intelligence by connecting our brain to computers, we'll need, to know where to put the plugs and what the protocols are for the connection. So this means understanding much more than we do today how our brain works.
I think you mentioned that, at least I understood the way that you think that the way that LLMs behave, there's already like science of general intelligence. What would be the, and you mentioned that LLMs, they are passing Turing test. It's already AGI. What is like metric for you that you say like, yeah, now I'm convinced that this is AGI and I will defend my argument no matter what others say?
These are always a bit sloppy definition. Nobody seems to know exactly what AGI works. So this means if you don't know exactly where the goalpost is, but personally, I think we're very close to AGI. Practically speaking, I think one big missing part is the ability to having a body and moving around and doing things like humans do, right? That's a big part that is missing. Now, some people will say, I don't need this for AGI, right? You may or may not agree. But I think the system today are pretty amazing. There is still, are beginning to know how to use tools like a system like ChatGPT. If I have to, as I said, to behave like an intelligent assistant, if I say, call this person and tell him this and this, or send this email, the system today cannot yet quite do that. We are not far away. People are working on this kind of things. So this is happening.
Basically, you mean like taking these more autonomous actions in external world?
It's kind of agentic.
Agentic AI, like truly agentic AI, yeah.
So this is being done as we speak, right? There are various companies doing this, startups and not startups. Once this is done, and if you're willing to say, for now, I don't need to operate in the physical world, to have a robot to manipulate, to cook, or bring a cup of coffee back, or things like that, then that will take a bit longer, partly because, the material of our body, flesh and muscles and things are pretty amazing things. It will take quite a bit to recreate at the same level of flexibility.
But do you think it's also engineering problem? or there's something that we can also use from humans?
I think that mainly an engineering problem, not an easy one, but and by the way, I think systems like LLMs and other systems can help in doing, for instance, research with materials that I think will be an important part of this kind of humanoid robotics. I don't see any major scientific hurdles to this. It's not like there is a speed of light limit that we cannot cross. These are
Okay, let's say AI is acting, autonomously in the world and reliably acting, because now the problem of like deception, of reward hacking, that it in general, like it fails to complete tasks. But let's say we solve those problems. As I understood your position, that we still shouldn't treat AI as like part of human society, right? But it still like should be considered as a tool. AI sentience shouldn't be something that we should consider seriously, as I understand your position.
so my position is really based on what I know today about today's LLM. So it may change in the future, but if it is a system that is intelligent because it has learned to be essentially a Turing machine through this autoregressive train, which has to predict the next word, and it's just a set of weights. Yeah, I don't think I'll be concerned about switching it off. Sometimes we as people, individuals, are very attached to certain things, like because they embody memories. Could be photographs, could be things. But if you have an LLMs that has memorized a lot of facts, including conversations, say over the years, that has done with you, switching it off is not only switching it off.
It's also
Then it's also switching off your life or memory of it. That's a different viewpoint, an interesting one that brings a new light on this. The question then is not you're switching, you're inflicting pain and killing another sentient being, but it's more like you are destroying part of yourself, part of your memories. If it becomes, a tool so connected with you that you store a lot of your experiences, then then it's like killing part of you.
And this is also that symbiosis, not necessarily like connecting to human brain, but that emotional and contextual, the symbiosis that will be happening between humans and machines, right?
Maybe you should have a backup.
Yeah. I mean, companies like developers, well, they will figure out how to, switch models, but maintain memory, probably. Maybe some models, they will be much better at retaining memory compared to other models. So like probably it's not that easy. It's not like a software, like traditional software.
The memories are in the weights, and so I don't see any problem. But in terms of the relations with this system, if they they're tools, but very closely connected tools, we can speak with them. We can, they're quite different from normal tools. So yes, you raise a very interesting question about what the relation will be.
We actually saw emergent of that to some extent when OpenAI released GPT-5. Many people were frustrated that GPT-4o is not there. And GPT-4, it was more like loose model. You could talk with it about like more wider things, and many people were frustrated, so they had to bring it back. So we already see, right, example of that emotional connection to certain type of model.
I always was surprised by how predictive some science fiction has been. There was the Star Trek. One of the version of Star Trek, maybe number 2 or 3, I don't know, had this humanoid as a member of the crew, which was called Data. And he was a robot. Basically, his function was every question that the crew had asked Data, and Data had an answer. And so there was already something like a ChatGPT. Of course, he had a human face. He was an actor, but there was this question, how to treat it. Right? I think it's important to communicate the fact that I think we need to understand not the details, but principles of intelligence, if we can. We have this very fascinating puzzle of, it's not just computer science theorems or so. We have systems like Gemini, ChatGPT, LLMs that are actually functioning in the real world. They're a physical phenomenon. You can put something in, something get out. We have to get, it's a bit like, you're a physicist, you look at the sun, you say, well, how? My goodness, how can it produce so much energy and heat? I want to know there is a principle of fusion, right? I'd like to understand the equivalent for LLMs. What are the principles? Why these things are working so well? There are some basic principles that can be repeated perhaps with different architectures, maybe that our brain is also using. And I think it's important not only for our curiosity about intelligence in general and our intelligence in particular, but also because people worry about explainability, about alignment, about safety. If we have a theoretical understanding, we have all of that automatically, if the theoretical understanding is good enough.
What do you think about the current alignment approaches? And do you think it's even makes sense to align machine intelligence to human preferences, considering that we have like different intelligences, and it seems like very different system emerges, and when we have to figure out how to coexist with that system, I don't think we will be able to fully control it the way that probably most of humans think.
Yeah, I'm not really satisfied with current approaches or even definition of alignment, because first of all, alignment can go wrong easily, and second, I really want to understand what's going on. Back to the theory and the principle. I think that's the way. If I understand how I have a theory of how they work and I can change, I know then, let's make an example. Right? We have a science of aerodynamics. We know pretty well how planes behave, what happens. So don't need to create a system that explain why a plane has crashed. We can do it. I think what is missing in these arguments is a better understanding that we need to have about how the system really work, how they become intelligent. And so that's, I think there should be more resources devoted to this. Right now, there are a lot of money, a lot of smart people, but very few are working on these basic issues of looking for fundamental principles of intelligence, because that will be giving us the answer, or some answers to a lot of these other problems, like alignment, and how to do it in the right way.
If we learn how to interpret AI models better, then we can find like a framework, ways how to make it.
Automatically you have an interpretability. There are people who are trying like mechanistic interpretability and so on, but that's basically what is needed is a kind of a theory, a little bit in the form of a theory in physics that tells you how basically the principles that are underlying the intelligence of these systems.
More physicists should work on interpretability then. I saw that concern that in the community, that because of that intense AI race, people actually don't have enough time to really think and experiment and try crazy ideas because of the pressure, and that also like impacts, right? Like what kind of research we're doing and direction we're going with AI systems. Yeah.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Especially students, they're very affected by this pressure because they have to publish in order to get into an academic career, and so there is definitely pressure in. There is not the freedom of thinking in a closed room. There is a lot of bias towards doing the things that are fashionable and things that can be done quickly, so therefore a bit incremental. And from the point of view of really developing new ideas, which I think is really needed, you're absolutely right. Locking yourself in a room is these days a good thing. Not easy to do, but I think it's important. Certainly we have an engineering approach to AI that works. Is this one based on LLMs, transformers, diffusion models? Work that is done there even is not wasted, but at the same time we should look at other forms of intelligence. And your ideas of a bit more of thinking and less pressure in publishing, and it's a great one.
Actually, I'm wondering, like when you mentioned that in 2015, that Demis mentioned that, okay, but by his prediction, like 25 years from now, did he elaborate like how he sees what approaches in AI systems might take us there?
No, I don't. Another thing we discussed is that this was probably a bit more recently, but was whether engineering or neuroscience would lead us there. And initially, Demis was thinking with 80% probability was neuroscience. But more recently, he said something like 50%. So
50% neuroscience and 50% engineering?
Right. Probably now will be even more on the engineering side.